Hi again, it's Ryan, and on the bench today we have a very dirty 1541 drive. I got this off eBay. It was listed as parts only, not working, but you know how eBay is. It is very dirty. Some scratches you can see on the top. It's just filthy everywhere. I do think that somebody has been messing with this already because the top case isn't entirely on all the way. And when you lift it up, you can hear something rattling around in there a little bit. So I haven't plugged it in. I haven't tried it out yet. Not going to until I at least get it apart and see what it looks like inside. So here's hoping that we can get this thing running again, and if not, here's hoping that the chips are still inside there that we can at least use for spares. So let's get this thing apart and see what we've got. First thing we need to do is get this thing apart. If you've never taken one of these apart before, real easy. We just have 4 screws here in the corners. One other thing to notice, there is a little case damage here. I'm going to try to be real careful with that. I think I can fix that, but I don't want it to get any worse. There are little bits of something falling out here as I'm turning this over. This one's not all the way out. There we go. Okay, so that's pretty nasty. Okay, well, the first thing I notice is that there are no screws in either of these. This one's only in about halfway, and there are no screws at all on this side holding the main part of the drive in the case. No wonder it was rattling around. Okay, so I'm going to start by taking off this top shield. There are 2 screws on this side and then 2 little dimples over here, one here, that help hold that shield in place on that side. Somebody's definitely been in here messing around with this, and it just kind of looks like they just threw it back together quickly. Okay. At least a couple things jump out at me right away. I don't see anything, I don't see any blown caps or anything like that, but I am kind of wondering what this is. There's a resistor that's wired in here over to UB1 and another one that's soldered right directly onto the legs there of this chip in UB1. That's a 7406 logic chip. I wonder if that's factory or if that's a mod. I don't think I've ever seen a 1541 with that on it before. This is PCB number 1540050, copyright 1982, so this is an early 1541. It's interesting. Okay. One thing I should note too that I did try earlier, the latch here works just fine. It might be a little tight, probably needs to be lubricated a bit, but it does work. Anyway, let's plug this in. I don't see anything now that's going to interfere with, the heads or anything. So let's plug this in and turn it on and just see what happens. Okay, I'm going handheld for a minute here, but I've got it plugged in. I don't have it hooked up to a computer or anything, just to give it power. And let's see what happens when I turn it on. Okay, the red LED comes on, the motor is spinning, head's not moving. You can see the spindle motor in there going. Red LED is still on. Head hasn't moved. Okay. Well, that tells me a couple of things. First, it tells me that we've got good 12 volt power going to the motor, and we've got good 5 volt at least to part of the board. So whatever's wrong, I don't think it's a power issue. So, turn it off and start thinking about what would cause that spindle motor to run continuously and the red light to stay on. Okay, so it seems like there's quite a few things that could cause that behavior. First one is we've got a logic chip here at UA1. It could also be the DOS ROM here in UB4. It could be the VIA, the versatile interface adapter, in UC2. This is the 6522. It could be the main processor, the 6502, over here in UC4. It could be a logic chip here in UC5, or it could be a logic chip in UD3, or a logic chip at UD5, which is actually inside here. We can actually pop that off and take a look at that logic chip. There we go. Now, out of those 7 options, which is most likely to be our culprit here? The logic chips don't fail all that often, and the ones that are here that could be a problem in this situation aren't really known to fail a lot. So, and they're all soldered directly to the board too. The ROMs don't go bad all that often in these. So my guess would be that it is probably either a 6522 or the 6502 has failed. Now, we can do a little bit of diagnostic here and see if we can figure this out. First thing we're going to do is we're going to get some power to the board. So I'm going to plug in the drive, turn it on, get my multimeter set up here, making sure that I'm not laying it down on the drive mechanism itself. I'm just putting it up here so that the camera can see it. Okay. Trust me, it's not resting on the drive mechanism, it's resting on the brackets. Okay, now, first thing I want to look for is whether I've got 5 volts going to each of those chips. I'm going to make sure that we've got power where we want to have power. All right, so we'll start testing the 6502. And on that chip, pin 1 is ground and pin 8 is power. Now, if you're not familiar with this, all these chips have a little notch here on the end. Okay, that's how you tell which way is which. The first pin over here, kind of as you're looking at it on the left, this is pin 1. You count down this side and up. So this is pin 1, this is pin 40. Okay. So we're going to touch our leads here to pin 1, and then we want to touch pin 8 and see what we get. And we get 5.01 volts. That's good. That's exactly what we want. So we know that the 6502 has power. Now the 6522 has ground on pin 1 and power on pin 20. Even 5 volts. That's good. Okay, so let's check our logic chips here. In UA1, .01, that's good. UC5 up here. Okay, that's good. UD3. Volts. And UD5, let's see if I can get in here without blocking the camera. Okay, let me check that one. That one might have a different power layout. Okay, no, it's the same. I just wasn't getting in here quite right because I was trying to avoid the camera. There we go, 5.02. Okay, so we've got good power to all the suspect chips. We need to check the DOS-ROM. And the DOS-ROM has the same layout in terms of positioning the power pins that the logic chips do. So with the ground down here, power up here, 5 volts. Okay, so we've got good power to all the chips. Next thing we can test is we can check for activity, see if the chips are doing anything. And to do that, we need a logic probe. Okay, so here's my logic probe. This is an Elenco LP560. You'll notice it has an indicator here for high and one for low. That'll light up red. This one will light up green. It's got a switch select for the type of logic. We're going to be always using TTL. And then we want it set on pulse. And then it'll beep when it's reading something. Okay, so like if it hits a low, the low light will come on and you'll hear the tone that indicates low. And then you just touch the tip to the pin of the chip you're testing. And it has 2 leads, positive and negative, that go to power on the board. So I did some testing, and I know I can get a good ground right here at this leg of this big fat capacitor. And I can get 5 volts of power right here on the leg of this resistor. Now, when we touch a pin, you'll get a response. See, in this case, I'm getting a high response and the tone. Okay. Now, there are charts that will tell you what readings you're supposed to get. So we're going to start with testing the 6502. That's in UC4. So pin 1 should give me a low reading. Pin 2 should give me a high. And then where you see P's, that means it should be pulsing. So going between high and low as the chip is sending and receiving data with the other and talking to the other chips. Okay. You'll see here on pin 5 we've got an asterisk. That just means that that pin isn't connected, so we're not going to get any reading at all. Okay. So let's start going down the pins and see what we get. So we should get a low on 1 and a high on 2. Low, high. The next two should pulse. That's low, that's high. The next one's pin 5, it shouldn't do anything. So those pins 3 and 4 aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. Pin 6 should be high, and it is. 7 should pulse, and it's not. 8 should be high, and it is. The rest on this side should be pulsing, and they're not. They're all showing up as high so far. Well, that's not the behavior we want to see. Okay, let's start over here. 21 should be low. And it is. And then we should pulse all the way up to a high on pin 40, which we expect it to be high because that's where it's getting the power. The next 3 coming down here should be pulsing. Okay, that one's pulsing. That's what we want to see. Trying to do this without getting my hands in the way of the camera. Okay, so we're pulsing there. Nothing there. That's actually okay, because that's pin 36. That's not pin 36 and 35 aren't connected, so we wouldn't expect to see anything there. The rest of these should be pulsing. And there is no activity at all here. This side of the chip, or at least most of these pins, seem to be dead. That's a high, but it's supposed to be pulsing. Okay. Now these lines through here where I wasn't reading anything, those are data lines that go to the DOS ROM. So it looks like the fault here is that the 6502 is just not talking to anybody. So let me see, I think I've got a spare 6502. Let's swap out that 6502 and see what happens. Okay, so here's my spare 6502. So I'm going to shut off the power. And remove 6502 here. Ordinarily, I like to use a different type of chip puller, but I can't get it in here to use it because of those capacitors on either side. Okay. And now let's put in the replacement. Now let's turn it on and see what happens. Okay, that's better. Let me go handheld for a minute. I'm going to turn it off. Now, you can see in here, keep an eye on the indicator light here, and if you look in there you can see the spindle. So when I turn it on, well, the red LED came on, then went off, the motor spun, and then stopped. So that's good. The head still hasn't moved though. So something else is still wrong here. Apparently there's more than one problem with this board. Okay, so to diagnose this a little bit further, I've got it hooked up to my VIC-20. I just hooked it up to the VIC because it was easiest to hook it up to at the moment. I've already cleaned the head and made sure there's no debris in the mechanism. Maybe I'll show you that later. So we're going to turn this on and see what happens here. Okay, so off, on, turn on the VIC, put a disc in here. Try to load a directory. Well, the motor is spinning, but the head isn't moving. So the stepper motor isn't moving the head. And it's just sitting there spinning. So run, stop, and restore. And the drive is still going. Well, that's not what it's supposed to be doing, obviously. Let's try this again. Turn it on. Okay, same behavior. Now, let's try the initialize command and see if that does anything. Well, the stepper motor is trying to move the head. It's just not getting anywhere. And the red light is flashing. I'll go handheld for a minute here. You can see it's trying to move it there. And then it shuts itself off and the red light flashes. Interesting. Okay, so that initialize command was really interesting because without being connected to the computer and just when I tried to load a directory, the head didn't even attempt to move. The initialize command made it try. Now what the initialize command does is sometimes the head will get parked over track 18. Now there's 35 tracks on a disk. 18 is where the directory is kept. And sometimes the drive just kind of loses track of where the head is. So what initialize does is it forces the head back to track 0, so then it knows where it is. The fact that that didn't work, that it was trying to move the head, but it wasn't getting anywhere, might mean that there's actually something in the mechanism in here that's actually jammed or preventing the head from moving. And it might not be an electrical or circuit problem with the circuitry at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this board off and get in here and get a good look at the mechanics of the drive. Alright, so the first thing to do is pull these connectors. Now, if you're worried about getting these back in the right orientation, you could always take a picture or write down the notes. But the fact is, when you pull these things off, these wires have been in the same position for so many years, they're going to want to stay there. So it's going to be pretty obvious which way they're going to go back on. So I don't bother really taking notes anymore. And don't forget this one over here, because this one's power. Now, there should be screws here in each of these holes. Obviously, a few of them are missing, probably from whoever the guy was before who was messing around with it. And he just didn't put all the screws back in. I have to see if I've got some spares around here that I can use. Okay, there should be one here, but there's not. And then over here on the side, there's supposed to be two going into this big black heat sink for these two voltage regulators. But there's only one, and it's only in about halfway. So now this will just lift right off of there. Kind of yucky in there. Definitely needs to be cleaned. Okay, quick visual inspection. Let's see here. There's something sticking out of here that shouldn't be. It looks like there might still be some in there. I don't know if that was dirt or what that is. I'm going to have to clean that and lubricate all these, make them, get them all cleaned up. Now, you should be able to use one of these. This is a head vibration protector. But you should be able to just push this in here, and then this tab on the end should push the head mechanically back to zero, where track 0 is. Yeah, see, it's not going anywhere. I'm not going to force it, but it's not going in all the way. It's not pushing the head. Okay, so I think we've definitely got a mechanical issue here. Looking at this from the side, let's see if I can get it up here so you can see this. It definitely looks like we've still got some stuff in here, and that wheel needs to turn. Yeah, okay, it's moving a little better now that I kind of, doesn't want to get past that. Yeah, I think it's just mechanically dirty and needs to be cleaned and lubricated, so I think the easiest way to do that is to take this mechanism out of the bottom chassis, which is not hard to do. It's just that you can't do it like this. The whole chassis has to come out. But since the guy I got this from left all the screws out on this side and 2 of the 3 out on this side, it's not really going to be much of a problem. This is the only screw holding it in, and it's only in halfway. I'll just take this out. Lift the chassis up and out. Ugh. Bug parts. Yuck. Okay. This is pretty filthy too. Okay, now to get this out, there's screws here on the side. Just 2 on each side. But this is why you have to take the whole thing out in order to get to it. Let's lay this back down. Yeah, this thing had probably been stored in an attic or a garage or something. Okay, so now in order to get this out, you have to lift it up and then forward. So up, and then forward. Oh, hello. There's a little spider or something walking around there. Yep. There he is. Hello, little spider. Hello, little spider. If any of you are arachnophobic, I apologize. Okay, so let me set this off to the side. Good look here. Okay, so under here, I've got it out. I might as well, let's take a look. Right. This is the stepper motor. This is what moves the head back and forth. And this is the spindle motor that spins the disc. I think I might replace that belt while I've got it open too. This is the Alps mechanism, which you can tell by the type of latch. You don't have to take it apart to figure that out. Okay. It's interesting, you can look in here and you can actually see the circuitry on the bottom of the head here, because that's the thing about these drives, is the read head and write head is on the bottom. So when you're looking at a disc, this, you know, we tend to think, oh, well, the side with the label is the upside. But actually, no, on these, the data is getting written on the bottom side and read from the bottom side. So, interesting little factoid. Okay, let me get this cleaned up and I'll be back. Okay, I've cleaned this the best I can without totally disassembling everything, and I don't think that's necessary. It's pretty clean right now. The head here moves a lot easier than it did. It's nice and smooth, so I think that was probably the problem, was that it was just bound up with all that dirt and gunk in here. So I cleaned everything with isopropyl alcohol and Q-tips, and I cleaned off the rails really well. I haven't lubricated anything yet because I wanted to show you that. So what I've got is something called liquid bearings. You can't use something like WD-40 on this. WD-40 isn't really even a lubricant, it's a solvent. And that will cause all kinds of problems in here. So you need to have special oil that's meant to be used around electronics. Now all you really need to do is just get in here and just put a couple drops of this on the rails. And then we're just going to slide the head mechanism forward and back a few times. Spread the oil out. Okay, that's all there is to lubing the rails. One other thing I'm going to do, I did this earlier, but I'm going to show you here, is we need to get in here and clean the head. Now this top part you can lift up a little bit. It'll come up quite a ways, but you want to be careful with it. And this white area there with that black line, that's actually the head. So Q-tip dipped in isopropyl alcohol. Get in here and just rub over it until nothing comes off on your Q-tip. Okay, that's all there is to it. So now we just get this put back. Well, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to clean up the case, and I'm not going to bother showing you that because that's just soap and water. And the way I've got my setup here, it'd be kind of difficult to film that and get sufficient light on it and stuff anyway. So I'm going to clean up all the other stuff, and then we'll come back here to get everything put back together. Okay, now that everything's cleaned up, let's get this back together. Slide in and drop it down. Okay, so everything has been cleaned, mostly reassembled. All the important bits have been reassembled. Let's turn on and see what happens. Okay, that's what it should do. Excellent. There we go. So all it needed was a new 6502 and a little bit of cleaning. It's interesting because this is a repair that involved both electrical and mechanical repair in one job. But hey, we're all back together again. So now we just have to finish getting the case fixed up. There's actually a couple problems with the case. I'll show you those here in just a second. Okay, so the cases have been cleaned. They're a lot better than they were. They're not going to pass for new. We still got some scuffs here. And there's definitely some discoloration, especially on the top part of the case. I don't know how easy it is to see, but along here, there's a little bit there, a little bit over here. Some yellowing. Otherwise, we're pretty good, except over here by the corner of the badge. And this was something I didn't know until I got the dirt off. You can see there's a bit of a crack. And it starts, runs right here, continues up here. So I need to glue that, but that won't be any problem at all to take care of. And then the bottom case, again, there's some scuffs that aren't going to come out. A little bit of discoloration here in the front. And then we've got this damage here to fix. This is melted into the plastic. There's not really much I can do about that. I could try to sand it and blend it in a little bit, but I'm afraid, given that we're on this grill, that I would probably end up causing more problems than I solve. So I'm just going to leave that alone. We'll get this put back into place, a little bit of glue on that, and then we'll be ready to reassemble. Alright, so the cases have been fixed. You can see here the crack has been repaired. If you look really, really closely, you can still see where it was. If you look on the inside, you can see the glue line here. But this is as good as this case is going to get, I think. If it was summertime, I might try to retro bright it, but the middle of the winter in Ohio, retro brighting ain't gonna happen. Alright, here's the bottom. I tried to smooth out this area here, where it was kind of melted and gouged. And then where it was broken over here, you can tell where the repair was if you're looking really closely, or if you catch it just right in the light. But it's nice and it's as strong as it was anyway. So that's a good repair. Now we just have to get everything put back together. Okay, here we are again, all reassembled. Let's give it a shot and make sure everything still works. There we go. That's a working 1541. Thanks for watching.